I'm joined by Praise Ihansekhien. She joins me now to review what's driving sentiment in the markets. Thank you so much for your time today, Praise. And let's first start with what we're seeing play out in terms of performance in the market today. How are investors positioning?
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. Yes, so for this week, we are expecting that investors would, look at the equities market, look at the rate hike of the MPC last week, and then begin to take decisions. The markets will have closed just about 3 minutes ago in Nigerian time, so I don't have some of the statistics of the market yet for market performance of today. But some of the expectations are that coming from last week where there was a very sentiment, that reigned in the market last week, would expect that some of these things will still continue to factor into this week. There are some sectors that, investors will begin to sell off on. And then we looked at the fact that fixed income instruments actually did, the rates across fixed income instruments, increased significantly last week. We saw the rates on the bond index increase, the bonds, primary market for bonds, the rates increased last week. We also saw that yields on the secondary markets for fixed income increased last week. So, of course, this is an offshoot of investors' expectations coming off the fact that the MPC hiked the interest rates by 14% last week. So, definitely, we expect that investors factor that into making their decisions for the equities market this week.
Yeah, because looking at some data on our end, towards midday as the market was set to close, we saw companies like MTN down about 6.9%, even FBN Holdings down as well, around 6%.
Okay, looking at MTN is slated to release their financial results for their next financial results this week. So we are expecting that, of course, the sentiment around telecom stocks are actually quite positive right now. Looking at the fact that their GDP performance actually increased in Q1 2022, and generally, sentiment around telecom stocks has been positive. The telecom sector is actually performing the most on the Nigerian equities market for so far this year. So we expect that investors would want to take position in those. But of course, there's always going to be room for profit taking. Just like if you invest in a stock when it's down, it gets to a point where the price increases. Definitely there will be profit taking, occasional bouts of profit taking on the market. So we are not surprised that if MTN as at midday, like you said, MTN was already down. That will not be a big shock because definitely investors have entered at the point where it was very attractive, and then because we know that MTN, sentiment around MTN and all those telecom stocks have been high, have been positive, so far this year. So investors taking profit will actually not be a very off thing to do. But the sectors, our expectation is still that the sector is going to perform well. So definitely we'll see some traction on MTN and other telecom stocks.
Yeah, because still on that space, I would like to speak on Airtel Africa, who just acquired some spectrum in Kenya, and I'm wondering how you think the market is going to digest this move.
Okay, the acquisition of the spectrum in Kenya, I think it cost them about $40 million. And, this definitely will help to boost 4G penetration in the Kenya region. And we know that some of our expectations for some of the things that we think would be a driver for the equities market, for the telecom sector, the markets this half of the year would definitely be the increased penetration of 4G in each region. So I think that the acquisition of this new spectrum in Kenya would definitely help Airtel be able to push this 4G, and then of course it's going to trickle down to their revenue, and of course it will also support 5G rollout when they're able to do that. So of course it will help them to increase average revenue per user, and then we expect that this positive, like I said, there's the sentiment around telecom stocks generally have been positive, so we expect that this positive sentiment would continue for Airtel Africa. I think last week Airtel Africa gained about 10%, and that alone, not last week, the previous week, gained about 10%, and that drove market performance significantly. So we can say that this is definitely a mix of investors wanting to position on a fundamentally good company, and also of course we cannot ignore the element of investors repatriating their funds through Airtel also. So I think it's a play of both for Airtel Africa.
All right, now let's shift our focus to the banking sector now, and more or less get your assessment on what we can expect in terms of the Q2 earnings. We've seen EcoBank as well come out on the market already with their results already. What do you make about that sector generally, and also the EcoBank results?
Okay, EcoBank, I think the results came out today, and we could definitely see that there was what we're expecting significant increase in both their top line and their bottom line. And we expect the sentiment around, banking performance generally was positive. Looking at the fact that their gross earnings, interest income, and all those things would have been able to increase due to the due to the hike in MPC rates. So EcoBank results released today saw that their interest income released by about 12.19%, and their bottom line also did significant numbers also. So we could attribute all those things to growth in the company. We could attribute those things to their ability to even charge. They will definitely be able to charge more interest income due to the hike in MPC rates. So we expect further increase in their interest income with the additional rate hike that occurred last week to 14%. We expect the banking sector as a whole to start to. I think we think that the banking sectors. Maybe investors are kind of sleeping on the banking sector lately because, it seems as if the sentiment around the banking sector has been down. I think the banking sector as at Friday was the banking index was down about 6% as at Friday. But then this is definitely one sector that we expect this rate hike to translate to. Generally, the expectation is that once the MPC hikes rates, every investor starts to rotate into the fixed income markets, and then equities markets is left. But for the banking sector, I think that's one major sector that investors are going to want to position in because they will be able to benefit significantly from this hike in MPC rate. And we could see that already playing, some element of that already playing out in EcoBank's results that we saw today.
Yeah, because when you look at the performance, like you rightly said, the banking index was down 6.5% last week. But I'm curious to know for you, which sectors in terms of the earnings you are anticipating the most?
Yeah, for this Q2, for this second quarter that just ended, we are expecting sectors like the oil and gas sector, the consumer goods sector. I mean, these are basically sectors that are able to pass down the cost of their production to their consumers. So you see that for the consumer goods sector, we've seen them being able to increase the price of their products. Even though, yes, we would not excuse the impact of production costs, the increase in inflation rates, spiraling inflation environment on their own production costs. But then we do not excuse the fact that they are able to pass down this cost to their consumers, and at the end of the day, they protect their margins. So the consumer goods sector is one sector we're actually quite positive about their performance. And we're also very positive about the oil and gas sector. I mean, the oil and gas index definitely was the best performing index last year, coming from the point of where the oil prices started to increase, and we expect oil prices have definitely been increasing this year also, so we expect that to trickle to the performance for the oil and gas sector. We're also looking, definitely, I think one sector that investors don't really pay a lot of attention to in Nigeria is also the healthcare sector.
Okay. I thought you were going to say insurance.
I'm going to go to insurance in a bit.
All right.
But just to mention about the healthcare sector, I know that the participation on the health sector is not that significant in Nigeria, but then this sector has actually grown, coming from COVID, and then being able to increase the price of their products, and then they saw increased patronage, health consciousness of everybody in the populace. It kind of helps the healthcare sector, and we're still expecting more performance from that. So going to insurance sector that you talked about, I mean, insurance sector is also one sector that is probably undervalued right now because some of this. I think the insurance sector actually closed up last week. It was just, I think it was just insurance and oil and gas. Yes, I'm sure of that. It was just insurance and oil and gas that closed up last week, and we could see that for a while this year, insurance sector has actually been performing. Investors have been bearish on the insurance sector, and then we see occasional pockets of bargaining hunting in the insurance sector. But I think that performance in the insurance sector is also going to be positive. Fundamentally, this what they're basing, where their revenue base and everything, they are going to have some level of positive performance, and we expect that. We would naturally expect investors to price this into insurance stocks also, because the insurance sector is definitely one, like I mentioned. I think that's one sector that is also undervalued. But then investors definitely is not just based on fundamentals. There's a there's a behavioral part of investors' reaction to stocks too. So I would tend to place performance on the insurance sector as a mix of, okay, maybe they haven't been wowing investors as investors thought, but then I don't think it's just based on fundamental performance. I don't think investors are reacting to insurance just fundamental.
Definitely.